Regardless of what soil type you're working with, there is one amendment that can improve any soil. In today's video, we're going to talk about what that amendment is. Spoiler, it's organic matter. There are 3 inorganic materials that are present in every soil, and the relative sizes of those 3 components are super important and kind of dictate their properties. Unfortunately, the sizes are really below human scale. They all just look like dirt to us. So those components are sand, silt, and clay. So imagine you were able to shrink yourself down so that an average grain of sand was about the size of my greenhouse, about 0.5 millimeter in diameter. I'm going to go and pick up an average particle of silt. So it would look like this. Compared to this, your average particle of clay would be the size of a grain of sand. I'm not going to bother showing that to you because you can't see it. It's too small in this video. All soils are going to be a mix of sand, silt, and clay in different proportions. And whichever particle is present in the highest proportion is generally going to be the particle that dictates the properties of the soil. If our soil is primarily sand, it's going to be less able to hold on to water and nutrients. So we're going to need to fertilize it more. We're going to have to water it more. If our soil is primarily clay, it's going to hold on to water and nutrients too well. And it's going to have a tendency to develop a structure called hardpan, which can be difficult for plant roots to penetrate. Silty soil is pretty good, but it can form a crust on the top when rain or other water hits it that can make it less good at absorbing water. And then if you have just the right ratios of sand, silt, and clay, you have what we call a loam. And from most perspectives, a loam is ideal, but without organic matter, your loam is still crap. Organic matter needs to be present in soil somewhere between 3% and 10% of the total mass. And without that organic matter, your soil just isn't going to be as hospitable for life. I hope you're always suspicious of miracle cures. I am. And it sounds like I'm giving you a miracle cure because I'm saying that organic matter will improve any soil. But in this case, it's the truth. You need to add organic matter to any soil type. And you even need to add organic matter if your soil's perfect. Even though organic matter is only present in a small percentage in most soil types, it packs a really big punch. It helps your soil form a structure called an aggregate, which is all kind of tied together by the stickiness of the organic matter. And soil aggregates can have very different properties from the different inorganic and organic components that come together to form an aggregate. In clay soil, the formation of aggregates can improve drainage by making the pore sizes in your soil larger. In sandy soil, aggregates have an opposite effect. They're more able to absorb and hold on to the water, which means you're not going to lose so much water and nutrient. And in silty soils, that aggregate is going to break up the surface a little bit so you don't form that film when you water or when you get rained on. Soil with good structure, which is lots of aggregates, is going to allow roots to penetrate it more easily. And those larger pockets of air between the aggregates are going to allow more oxygen to seep down into the soil, which the roots need. Roots don't do photosynthesis, so they have to breathe the same way we do. They breathe in oxygen and they breathe out carbon dioxide. Larger pore spaces in the soil let that happen more readily, but they're also right up against those aggregates which are holding on to water, which also the roots need to keep your plant alive. This more structured soil also provides more habitat for beneficial soil organisms like worms and springtails and carnivorous larvae of various insects. Complex soil will also tend to support more diverse communities of fungi and beneficial soil bacteria that really help supercharge your plant's growth. Over time, as your soil ages, as your plants grow, as fungi and bacteria develop through there, you are losing organic matter all the time. It's being eaten basically. And just as we take in food and convert it to energy and carbon dioxide, your soil organisms, including your plant roots, are also taking in some organic components and converting them into energy and carbon dioxide. You are going to have less and less organic matter in your soil over time unless you do something to replace it. So if you don't want to lose all the benefits of high organic matter in your soil, you got to add more organic matter. When you're starting a new garden bed, you may want to add actually a whole bunch of organic matter. Say you've got heavy clay or very sandy soil, you're probably going to want to add as much as 50% organic matter to that just from the start. And it's really common to do this by tilling in your soil amendments. The best time to till in soil amendments is actually going to be in the fall. This will allow over the winter season to kind of mellow out what you've done to your soil and allow those aggregates to form. I recommend going light on the nutritious soil amendments. So if you're adding compost or composted manure, if you add that at high quantities, you could actually burn your plants. So instead, I would recommend more inert organic matter as part of your initial tilling in, if you choose to till. Materials like shredded leaves and lawn clippings and coconut coir or peat moss are all really great low nutrient sources of organic matter that you can work into your soil for that initial setup. If you're a tiller, I've got to say tilling is best done in moderation. If you over-till your soil, you're breaking up those aggregates that are kind of the whole point. If you must till, it's best to till maybe in the spring and in the fall. And you're only going to want to till when you're working in organic matter or preparing your bed for planting. And that's really it. For those of us who don't till, either you're lazy like me or you are a no-till gardener, there are other methods that we can use to add organic matter to our soil. And my favorite method is chop and drop. Any annual crop that doesn't regrow from its roots can be a really great target for chop and drop gardening methods. So what we're doing when we chop and we drop is we get in there and at the soil line, we cut off the plant and then we drop it on top of the soil. The roots are left in the soil. Stems and leaves that you've left on top of the soil will serve as a mulch over the short term, and over the long term, they also get worked down into the soil, either by our own activity with the cultivating and the digging and the planting, or through the activity of soil organisms. Pretty much any crop can be chopped and dropped as long as it's not diseased. You don't want to be adding diseases back into your soil. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend composting diseased crops. You're going to want to throw those in the garbage. Let them go off to the landfill. If for some reason you're not comfortable with chop and drop, maybe it's ugly or whatever else, you can also just mulch your garden beds. A layer of 2 to 3 inches of inert mulch, so bark or shredded leaves or leaf mold or lawn clippings or whatever, is going to be sufficient to go a long way towards replacing organic matter that's lost to your soil through respiration. In addition to adding their own organic matter, mulches can supercharge your soil by encouraging more soil life. They keep the soil more moist and more cool, which allows higher and healthier worm populations. You're going to get more insects in there, breaking down the mulch and also leaving their own dead bodies behind in the soil to add to your organic matter. You may also see enhanced plant growth because you have more regular moisture levels and cooler soil in the heat of the summer. So mulch can offer a lot of benefits in addition to adding organic matter back into your garden. I'm a big fan of mulching with compost, but I also live somewhere with naturally salty soil. And the problem with compost is it can be high in salts. Compost mulch in moderation. Don't add more than an inch or 2 of compost in a year to a given planting bed. And if you want more mulch volume on top of your soil, you're going to need to add something else in addition to your compost to make up for that deficit. If you, like me, are dealing with salty soils, the best time to mulch with compost is in the fall or before whatever your rainy season is. We get most of our precipitation here in the winter, so if I mulch in the fall with my compost, all that water is going to run through and drain through the bed and rinse out the extra salt. So my best time is in the fall. If you have like summer monsoons or something, you might want to mulch in the spring. You can also preserve the organic matter in your soil by always keeping it covered or growing something. When you're not growing a crop, so for instance, I'm going to be pulling this garlic out in the next week or two, you should have something on top of your soil like shredded leaves or grass clippings, or you should consider growing a cover crop like crimson clover. If you don't want to go with a legume to add nitrogen organically, you can do a green mulch. In my pollinator bed, I'm currently experimenting with Lacey-Phacelia, which is a member of the borage family, and it's more of a green manure. It doesn't add nitrogen, but it holds on to nitrogen to add it back into your soil. If you use the chop and drop method in addition with your green manure, then you're protecting your soil when it's not actively growing crops for you, and then you're producing more organic matter to add back into the soil at minimal cost to yourself. If you've been watching any of my videos, you've probably already heard me talk about my heavy clay soil. And clay soil is kind of like the hallmark of gardening in the Cache Valley. We all deal with it. And maybe you've looked at my soil in a video and you've thought to yourself, this doesn't look a lot like clay soil. There's a lot more going on here and it seems to drain really well. And the reason for that is that I add a lot of organic matter to my soils, and that helps form those aggregates that have made gardening in clay soil a lot more pleasant for me. In fact, now that I've been gardening in amended clay soil, in my last garden I actually had sandy loam soil and it was, supposedly perfect. Now that I'm gardening in heavily amended clay, I think it's safe to say that it's my new favorite soil because I get so much better moisture and nutrient retention here, and that pays dividends in the heat of the summer. So if you're gardening in soil that you're not happy with, consider amending with organic matter. Pick your favorite. I like compost, I like shredded leaves, I like grass clippings, and use a gardening method that helps retain and add organic matter to your garden over time. And I think you'll find that you might not have your favorite soil, but you have some pretty amazing soil after a while. Thank you for joining me here in my garden today. I hope you have a wonderful time in your own.